Hello, Victory. Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Matt, and beside me here is my wife, Angel, and we're the marriage pastors of Victory Church. And we are joined in the studio today by Dr. Mike Sytsma. And if you don't know Dr. Mike is the founder and senior therapist at Building Intimate Marriages in Suwanee, Georgia, which is just down the road from where we're recording this today. He's also been a pastor for many years.
Yep.
And before answering the call to be a full-time sex therapist about 30 so years ago, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Started Building Intimate Marriages in 98.
In 1998.
Yep.
And Building Intimate Marriages is a place that you have a team of sex therapists
Correct.
that work with couples.
Marriage and sex therapists and some trauma specialists. Yep.
And what's so cool about Mike is he also helped co-author the book with someone we had on the podcast previously, Shanti, which is Secrets of Sex and Marriage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Correct. And go into that in a deeper way. Mm-hmm. So we're excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
It's an honor. It's always an honor to work with Victory and with you guys.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Well, and I think what you didn't say is that Dr. Mike has actually been our therapist. Mm-hmm. So,
yes.
So it is an honor to have you here.
Thanks.
And get to share your wisdom with others.
I think that's important for, us to seek out therapists, not necessarily because we have major issues in our marriage, yes, but because we want to keep our marriage sharp and strong and bring people in to be able to speak to it. And so you have been a excellent voice in our marriage to help us over the years. And so we appreciate that.
Yeah, I tell people, you hire coaches, you hire experts, you hire tutors for so many things in our life that's important. We hire a tax person, we hire a golf coach, a tennis coach. So why don't you hire somebody that has a specialty in the most important relationship in our life?
Yeah.
Just to do regular tune-ups or enrichment. I do a lot of enrichment work with couples. They come in and say, we're in pretty good shape, but we think it could be better.
Absolutely.
And that's fun work, and it's much, it's richer to do that at that stage than we're falling apart. That's fine. We can work with that as well.
Yeah.
But to keep it moving forward.
It's better to work on it earlier on before it gets to that place.
Correct.
Well, they say that couples are having issues, I'll say it like that, having issues about 6 years before they actually go to someone and get help.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. And especially, in this particular topic area where couples don't talk well with each other, they don't know how to talk well with each other, and having somebody who, I've learned to be really comfortable with the subject and to create a space and coach them and guide them in just connecting with each other. Yeah. The book was designed for couples to read out loud to each other to prompt that kind of discussion. But at times it gets tough for couples to go to some arenas of intimate areas, whether that be finances or the in-laws or parenting, or especially something like sexual intimacy or spiritual intimacy. Yeah. And to have a coach who can help create the space and invite them to the table can be really good for couples. They don't have to be having particular problems to have the help of, let's teach you how to do this well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, and something that we have seen that is a common issue is people don't know how to invite God into their sex life. Yeah. And the way that I like to see it is that God was he was the creator, but the way I like to see it is that God was an artist and he is this painter and he had this canvas and he painted this beautiful picture on this canvas, and then the enemy came in and painted over that beautiful picture, because I feel like in our society, we see what the enemy painted instead of what God originally meant for us to see on that painting. And so I would love to hear your ideas, and I would love for you to speak into that, because I feel like we have a tainted view of sex and intimacy, even in marriage. Mm-hmm. So if you could just speak into that, I would love that.
I love the imagery you have there. I think it's really accurate that God has this amazing, beautiful plan for sexual intimacy. And we're given these messages that totally distract us from the beauty of what he's designed. Now, I love the idea of God being brought into the bedroom. I do know for some of my clients that's a little creepy. The thought of God standing there while we're having sex is totally distracting.
Yeah.
For some that works well. For some, praying before sex really helps them to ground it and make it about his design. But helping them to remember that, exactly what you said, this is God's. Chapter 3 in the book is about vision, helping couples to establish what is our vision? Why do we do this act? What's it about for us? And then chapter 10, I unpack what I think is critical in the vision, and that is God's design for it. And it starts with it being about intimacy and about connection, not just about pleasure, but it's also about pleasure. If God is the artist for this, it's going to reflect him as the artist. And so it's going to work best when we reflect his design. Christ, for example, is what we would theologically call incarnate. He is both fully God and fully man. Removing any of his humanity, he's no longer Christ. Removing any of his divinity, he's no longer Christ. It's both the spirit and the body of it. And so I tell couples, if we're going to reflect God's original artwork, then it needs to be both about the body of the act and about the spirit of the act. And sex gets really distorted anytime we overemphasize one or the other. Anytime sex is just about the climax or just about the practices that I can do, that it's focused just on the body, it's distorted, it's warped, and it's going to do damage to everybody involved. Or when it's just about the spirit of the act, then it begins to fall apart. Well, it doesn't have to be about my pleasure. It's about, me pleasuring you. Well, that's good, but you're removing the body of the act for you, and it's going to break down for both of you. So how do we keep it God reflective? And I love that image of how do we keep it always looking like the picture that he designed? Because you're right, he did design it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that kind of brings us into chapter 10, where you talk about this a little bit more, the Adah of this. And so, which I find very interesting and I think it's amazing, it's brilliant. But do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Through history, we've had a lot of different visions for why sex. The prominent message in the church has usually been about procreation. God said, go be fruitful and multiply. And sex is about procreation. Out of that intimate act, we kind of reflect what he did in creating. Our culture tends to say it's just about pleasure. It's about how strong the climax is, or how many climaxes, or how frequent, or that it gets hyper-focused on practices. And yet when we read through Scripture, God is so focused on the intimate. He's so focused on the oneness. He prayed in the garden, I'd rather not walk through this. I'd rather not drink this cup. Yeah. But John records that he says, I do it, Father, that they may be one, even as we're one. The whole act was the pursuit of oneness. And our sexuality is a pursuit of oneness, where we can get to yada, to know. But that word doesn't just mean like I know you guys. It is a really intimate type of knowing that is two-way knowing, where I cause myself to be known and I seek to know. I enter and I'm entered into. And when we look at it from that perspective, sex becomes so deep and so profound, that a husband and wife gets to know one another in a way that nobody else can even come close to. I know where to touch you. That totally excites you. I know that, if you're in this mood, that this kind of touch, not going to work. But this kind of touch, you're going to get playful with it. That you enjoy these types of acts. And nobody else gets to know that about us. That we can draw each other in, that we can bring each other to this moment of surrender. And our whole body changes. Our whole physiology changes. And then we lay there in that post-surrender moment and drink each other in. There's something richly profound and very reflective of who God is in that deep type of knowing. If it's just about images or about acts, or we've robbed it of the beauty of the Adah.
Well, that's so sacred. I mean, you look at that sex in marriage, it's like this is a holy moment.
It is.
that we are engaging in.
Yeah.
And, anything that was sacred in Scripture, God put lots of boundaries around.
Mm-hmm.
Not to rob people of it, but to keep it precious, to keep it set apart, to keep it sacred. And it doesn't surprise me that he puts boundaries around our sexuality, where he says, yeah, don't share it with people outside of the marriage. Don't let it flow out into the streets. Drink from your own spring. And he invites us to keep it covered, to keep it not hidden, to remove from anybody else, but to keep it sacred. Where in the New Testament he says, keep the marriage bed sacred. And the original language there, I like, the concordance says that means to not do anything that would rob it of vim or vigor. And so what he's saying is, don't do anything in your marriage bed that would rob it of life force.
Amen.
Always keep adding life into it. And many times couples come in, and the reason they're struggling is they keep trying to bring stuff into their marriage bed that robs it of life force. And Scripture says, no, keep it sacred. And that changes sometimes from couples to couple, often from couple to couple, what adds life to their sexual life and what detracts from it, but helping them to figure out what the vision is for us. And that's part of the knowing that I know this act really energizes you. Mm-hmm. And I would enjoy doing this act, but I know it because of your history or what it means or just your personal preference. It robs life force from you. So I keep it sacred by protecting us from that act, even though it sounds kind of fun to me, Yeah. And that's the beauty of the Yadah and of keeping it sacred and keeping it incarnate.
Yeah. Wow.
What would you say to a couple that listen to this is kind of like mind-blowing, like, they looked at their sex and marriage for them, maybe it hasn't been something that they've kept sacred or looked at in a holy way like that. Maybe they have brought things in that has tainted that. And they're like, how do we get back to what you're talking about?
Yeah. Good. Because to go back to your image, I think the enemy has done really well with all of us in painting a cross and doing some marring and teaching us things that are not healthy. Yeah. Pretty much everybody's been exposed to pornography, to images that aren't helpful for us, or has been told something needs to occur in their sex life that's not characteristic of who they are. Or there's been direct wounding that somebody has taken something from them or has made them do things that is scarred. And I love the question, how do we get back to the heart of God in this? I think it starts first with acknowledging that there is wounding. To go back to your image, to acknowledge that the picture I'm looking at was not the original. That has been covered up with something that's not healthy. And just acknowledging there's been wounding. I've been exposed to things that, wow, I really wish I pursue things that probably haven't been healthy for me. But as I shift the vision and I begin to say, but I want to pursue this amazing gift, this amazing thing that God has given. And I start to unpack what that vision is. It's about the knowing. It's keeping it incarnate. And then we slowly move toward it. If I decide, I don't like how my body is, I want to change it. If I decided I wanted to go into bodybuilding, which I have zero interest, you can tell. But if I decided I wanted to, that's not something that's going to happen next week. It's probably going to take years of working at it.
Yeah.
And couples often think if we just do this one thing, our sex life will be great. Yeah, I wish it worked that way, but this is too sacred, it's too intimate, it's too powerful a part of your life to think I can just do one small thing and it'll be amazing. It's going to take time and discipline and working at it and talking to each other. But the beauty of it is, over time, as we continue to pursue a vision of we want to be playful with each other, we want to be discovering with each other, we want it to be about the spirit of opening up and enjoying one another. Over time, we can get to that vision to where we're really drinking it in. One of my mentors, teachers, used to say that he didn't think couples could have a truly great sex life until they had been having sex with each other exclusively for about 30 years.
We're not quite there yet.
We are.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
But
This summer will be 24 years, so we're
you get close. Yeah.
we're getting close.
He said it just takes that long for us to fully accept who we are, fully accept who each other are. That's the good and the bad, and to really learn one another and ourselves. And I love the beauty of that image, that it's something that just takes time to heal all of those wounds. But it does require me to be pursuing something and pursuing the richness and the good. Here's what we want in our marriage life. No, it's not there yet, but we both want it. We'll get there.
Yeah. You know, I think about sex and marriage so often is we go into sex, especially early on, maybe in marriage, where it's about what I can get out of this.
Correct.
You know, my self-pleasure, this orgasm for me. And we're not necessarily thinking about the other person and approaching this in a place of honor and respect to the other person.
Or we're thinking about them as the fulfillment of what I want.
Yes.
Almost an object.
Yes, very much so. And if we ask a newly married couple, do you view your spouse as an object? The answer would be, of course not. Because that's not the heart of it, but that's how it plays out. And so when there's a mismatch in desire, well, there's something wrong with you, because if you really loved me, you would meet my desires.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and so I'm going to try to make you into who I want you to be. So I am fulfilled in this process. And part of that is you need to be just as fulfilled as I am. And so if you're not as fulfilled as I am when we do this, there's still something wrong with you. And we're always trying to change our partner to be who we want them to be. I think after 30 years, you give up on that. You know, you reach the point that you're able to say, wow, you are so beautiful. You're amazing. You're so strong. Your heart is for me, because we learn to have a heart for each other. And we give up on trying to make our spouse who we want them to be. We allow them to become who God is calling them to be.
It's good.
Because that's your heart.
Yeah.
I know you want to be who God wants you to be. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. And I'm pursuing God's heart in my life as well. And as we do that, the whole relationship gets safer. It's easier for me to be naked and unashamed because I'm pursuing who God is in my life. I am more confident of it. And the sex can become so much richer, so much more profound, so much more playful. And it doesn't fit the sex that we wanted when we were 18. It fits something so much better. Yeah. But it takes us a while to let go of, as Paul said, to let go of the childishness, you know, and to pursue what's mature, to pursue the heart of each other.
Well, and it's interesting because if one spouse is seeking out to pleasure the other one, and the other spouse is seeking out to pleasure, you know, both spouses are going to be pleasured, you know, but if you're only seeking out pleasure for yourself, then it's very one-sided.
Or if I'm saying, if I bought into a message that says my body is for my spouse and I just need to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
I'm denying self.
Yeah.
And it's no longer intimate. It's no longer about both of us.
And I think a lot of women go through that.
A lot
of women are in, you know, I'll say stuck in a rut, you know, stuck in this rut of duty sex just to pleasure their husband. And a lot of women aren't understanding that they can get pleasure as well. And they desire
that's part of the
pleasure.
Design.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And many of them have been taught that. Many have been taught that your husband needs sex, which is a lie. That your job then becomes to meet his need. And I think that is so destructive on both parts. To say that a guy needs sex is to say you can't control it.
Wow.
You know, you can't discipline it. We're just going to acknowledge that you need that, so you're going to act out at times. And I think how destructive, how demeaning to him. Absolutely. He is a holy warrior of God. He and his buddies can go up against the gates of hell itself. And then you're going to tell him, yeah, but you need sex, so we understand that. Wow. That's so demeaning to him. And if he needs sex, then she becomes just the fulfillment of his need. And how demeaning to her. She is so much richer, more beautiful. She brings so much more to the table than just meeting his needs. And if her job is to meet his needs, she can't attend to her own. She can't discover what she wants and say, oh, no, we're never doing that because that robs vim and vigor. But we can do this. Let me turn your world upside down. And she can bring herself fully in.
Yeah.
So I think many times both husbands and wives have been taught, that picture that's so unhealthy.
Yeah. I know even for us, I've gotten in that rut before. And I remember in one of the sessions with you, you said, Angel, slow the intimacy down. And especially in that foreplay time, notice what's going on in your body. Notice like what is taking place. And I slowed the process down and I was thinking through it as it was happening. And I was like, wow, I've never really listened to my body during intimacy. And that opened a whole new world for me because I was able to understand that I had desires and there was things that that was being awakened in me that I had no idea. I know this is probably TMI. Is this TMI?
That is up to you.
But yes, but it was really cool because just the other day I was on the phone with a friend of mine, best friend. We grew up together. And she has been married the same length of time that her and her husband have been married the same length of time that we have. And they also have a 5-year-old. And so we're talking about intimacy and stuff and how hard it is and with a 5-year-old and all that. And I mentioned what you had talked to me about in that session. And she goes, I've never done that before. I've never slowed things down to pay attention to my body. And she was like, I'm going to do that. So what you've taught me has been passed on to others. So yes.
And when sex is just about the other, we don't take time to figure out. And I do think you're right. It goes both directions. There are husbands that do the same thing, but I do see that more common in wives, that I ask them what they like and they don't know because the whole focus has been on what he wants.
Yeah.
And they have really good hearts. They're trying to please him. But inviting them to be a little bit more self-focused, to allow themselves to figure out what they enjoy. Yeah. Because you're right, as I'm sure you guys talked about with Shanti, the receptive desire doesn't kick in until she's aroused and she is aware of it and she views it positively.
Yeah.
And then the desire kicks in. And if she never allows herself to be aware of it, and that's part of I believe God's design. He identifies himself, Christ identifies himself as the groom in Revelation. And he clearly says, I'm speaking to my bride. And he says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And I like to point out, he's not pounding on the door. He's not trying to bust the door down. He's not standing outside and guilting us for not opening the door. He's not threatening to go to the neighbors if we don't open the door. Yeah. He stands there and just politely knocks, and he says, when you're ready, I'm ready. And he's speaking to his bride. He says, and when you're ready to open the door, I will come in and we will have a sensual feast together. But he allows that receptivity. He allows us to say, I'm ready to draw you in. I'm ready to connect with you in this space. And that, I rarely see that in many couples. I often see him demanding or him feeling guilty that she hasn't opened the door, that they're fighting over how often do we get to have a sensual feast together. And
a new keyword. What is it called? Like a little secret word for intimacy, feasting together.
Which, if we think of it, if that's part of the vision, that's a rich vision that so God has given us.
Yeah.
And when that works, it works well. But it takes both of us, doing our part and playing it really well.
Yes.
I love that imagery.
That's really, really good.
We might not now have a new code word.
We might very well have a new code word. I like that.
Let's go feasting
word
together.
Let's go feasting. Kids will be wondering why we're going to our bedroom and not the kitchen. But,
well, we do hide candy and snacks in our room. So
if you could just take a moment and just share with our audience how they could find out more about you and building intimate marriages and what you provide for couples.
Good. So the easiest way to learn about what we're talking about is to go to the book website, secretsofsexandmarriage.com. And through there, they can contact Shanti's ministry. They can contact my ministry. But it's at intimatemarriage.org. And we have free resources for couples there. And anything that we're doing is linked through. There are a ton of podcasts that are linked through intimatemarriage.org, and just resources to help them get started. Other things that are under development too.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks
this has been so rich,
Yes.
so enjoyable to sit down with you and
Good.
have you share with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.